What will Epic Games' win mean for app stores in 2024?
And what does Amazon's Australian cricket broadcast deal mean for Aussie sports fans? Hey there. Welcome back to Vertical Hold Behind the Tech News, the award-winning tech podcast where we catch up with Australia's leading technology journalists and commentators to dive into the big tech stories of the week. I'm Adam Turner, and I'm joined as usual by Mr. Alex Kibben. Now, Alex, I saw on your site this week that you watched a game show based on the classic game Frogger and didn't like it. I was a bit shocked there. Games like how could they go wrong with Frogger? What was wrong with it, and what do you think would make a better show?
What was wrong with Frogger is that it's really, really dull. I mean, if people want to watch this, you can legitimately watch this. And I was not aware of this, and maybe our listeners were, but it's on 7 Plus. So as long as you don't mind a whole lot of ads and a bit of crashing along the way, you can, but shouldn't watch it because it's basically kind of dull. Wipeout meets It's a Knockout that ignores Frogger mostly, except when it feels like it has to. Your only interesting bit of trivia in it was that it was shot at Sydney Olympic Park. And I actually happen to know someone who worked on it because they contacted me after I wrote my review. But they've agreed to stay off the record for that one. In terms of what would make a better game, clearly, obviously, I have to pitch for Bubble Bobble. Because who wouldn't want to see teams of people in inflatable dragon suits trying to capture fruit inside balloons? I mean, it's a game show concept that just has money written all over it.
Are you sure the Japanese haven't already done it? Because that sounds very Japanese. Well, I want a crossover between Big Brother and the Commodore 64 classic Impossible Mission, just so the host could say, "Stay a while, stay forever." I'm in just for that.
Look, all those contestants falling into bottomless pits and screaming, that's going to turn the advertisers off, I think. Little bit of a problem. But we can workshop this.
Yeah, we'll get there. Anyway, later we'll be chatting about the implications of Epic Games' epic win against Google. But first, I caught up with Steve Molk from TV Black Box to talk cricket.
Sports? That's my cue to get out of here.
Well, summer's here and the time is right for someone to mess around with Australia's sporting rights, which means there's no one else to talk to but our man Steve Molk from TV Black Box. Steve, welcome to the pod again.
I'm dancing in the streets, Adam.
Love it. Amazon has swooped in and snapped up some cricket rights, some big ones. What's the deal here? Should cricket fans be concerned?
Well, can I say that depends?
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the thing that made it most spurious or most sort of interesting was that when this was announced by Prime Video and then the ICC, it was right about the time that the Minister for Communications said, here is the legislation we're going to be putting about the new anti-siphoning list, which, spoilers, isn't new. The only thing they've really done for the anti-siphoning list is add in a whole bunch of women's sporting rights into the same process, which is great, right? Off the back of a big year for the Matildas.
They were going to get absolutely hammered up.
They absolutely had to, yes. Yeah. The same rules still apply, however, for the anti-siphoning list, and that is for any of those things on the list, they have to be on free-to-air unless the free-to-air network passes on it and then someone else can buy it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of just the basic rules of the anti-siphoning list. And how we see the NRL and the AFL deals play out, because Foxtel bankroll ostensibly the largest portion of those deals. They do a deal with 7 and 9 respectively that says you can have some games live and we've got every game live except for the grand final, because, look, a combination of it's worth the most money to 7 and 9 for the grand finals, as much as the codes don't want to go, let's split the audience.
Yeah.
Even though, Adam, do you know how easy it is to add two numbers together? Very fucking easy.
Some people seem to struggle. You would think but some people seem to struggle.
Particularly the marketing and executives at Rugby League and the AFL. Anyway, in the anti-siphoning list, it does include a whole bunch of cricket, particularly the World Cups. Anytime our national team plays is included in the anti-siphoning list, with the asterisk that those laws only apply when our national team plays in Australia.
Okay.
So this deal that Prime Video and the ICC have signed is for the next 4 years, 2024 to 2027 inclusive, for like literally everything. Men's and women's cricket World Cups, the T20 Cups, Champions Trophy, under-19s, and the World World Test Championship final. Everything. All the streaming rights. It's like 400 and nearly 50 games across that time period. Absolutely not one of them is being played in Australia.
So you're still going to be able to watch the Boxing Day test. You're still going to be able to watch the one-day series with, I don't know who's coming out this summer.
Yeah, this is just the International Cricket Council's big hoo-ha. So remember, we just won, for example, the ICC One Day Cup in India. That by rights we shouldn't have won, but we stepped up and did a great job. Under this agreement, had this been in place at the time, it would have been streamed on Prime Video, and that would have been the only place to see it. Now, for Prime to swoop in, just as a by the way, there's a couple of parts to this. One, the agreement goes to 2027. Guess what's happening in 2028, Adam? I'm not sure that you'll be able to guess, but let me break the news to you gently. In 2028, Australia and New Zealand host the T20 World Cup.
Aha. So there's time to redo the rights before then.
A whole new deal will be struck probably in about 25, 26 for that.
We'll pencil in that episode of the podcast now.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll just cut back to this moment where I was right. Yeah. The other part of it, of course, is that Foxtel and Nine, as is the standard these days, had last rights. So someone else can turn up and say, I want to pay $5 for the thing that you are only bidding $4 for. And the nature of the agreement then says that if the incumbent chooses to pay $5 to match the price of the new bidder loses.
Yeah.
Old bidder gets to pay $5. And so what you start to see in some places is some spurious bidding where someone's trying to jack up the price on the incumbent because they know it's already expensive, blah, blah, blah. In this case, Nine and Foxtel both went, yeah, I mean, they're overseas at times that aren't super great for us, right? The T20 World Cup next year is in the West Indies and the United States. So what time of day are we going to be getting up to watch the T20 World Cup? Answer is early morning if we make the final. That's it.
Yeah.
Then it's in India and Sri Lanka in 2026. The one-day World Cup is in India, and then that was this year. And then 2027, it's South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia. Now, do you remember how great it is to watch cricket in South Africa? No, because you don't do it.
Because no one gets up to do it. Yeah.
Not even Perth people watch it over there. And the Champions Trophy is 2025 in Pakistan. So the same kind of problem. You know, it's just at times that are inappropriate to our prime time or our prime cricket times.
Where could you have up until now, where would you have watched these matches?
Nine and Foxtel largely had the deal. Yeah. And for Foxtel to step away from it actually is pretty huge. For them to say that we don't see the bank benefit in it because they have regularly hung their hat on, we have all of the things. If you like a code, we've got all of the stuff. However, I get for Foxtel to go USA, West Indies, India, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Pakistan. I mean, it's only really going to be your hardcore cricket night owls that are going to want to sit up and watch that. So for the next 4 years, we won't have that, but we will have every domestic game under the sun on our platforms. The thing that's got, look, Free TV Australia, God bless them, are doing a great job lobbying for 7, 9 and 10. And they understandably freaked the shit out when Prime Video announced this deal because, more, you can see the overseas streamers are coming for our sport, blah, blah, blah. Mate, first of all, calm down. Second, you guys didn't want them, right? Prime Video swooped in because the Free TV went, no, thanks. It's not like 7 or 10 lined up for it. So, we can just put that into a little bit of perspective. The other part of it is that the reality is because Prime Video are, air quotes, only a streamer, it still doesn't preclude a 7 or 9 or 10 or even ABC or SBS buying the rights to the Australian games to broadcast them as
from
like
Amazon.
a sub deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally
And a
legitimate,
lot of that
totally
happens
possible.
now at the moment, doesn't it? That already
Mate,
happens.
particularly with the round ball football World Cup,
Yeah.
right? Lots of that happens because when was the last time the World Cup was in Australia? Spoilers, like I don't think ever.
Hmm.
So consequently, it's only if we make the final. When did Australia last make the final for the World Cup? So in that situations, it's like, yeah, SBS usually sub buy from Optus. And if we remember a couple of World Cups ago, Optus just went, we can't do this properly, so we'll give every game to
Their
SBS.
streaming platform shit the bed, and SBS stepped in and said,
In
"Thank you
the
very much."
biggest way. It was pretty
Yeah.
amazing. One thing we know is that Amazon's streaming platform is unlikely to do that.
Hmm. Yeah, in
So
some
people
ways,
will be able
viewers
to,
are in good in some ways, viewers are in good hands, aren't they?
yes. And this is if look, frankly, if you are a fan of cricket in all of those ICC formats, for the cost of a Prime Video subscription, Adam, which is what, $70 a year, right? Not even. You get access to watch live and I would assume catch up all of these games at your leisure on as big a screen or as small a screen as you would like to do so.
And would it cost you more if you were trying to get it out of Foxtel?
Well, very likely, and Nine
Yeah.
probably wouldn't have even been able to deliver. Although Nine are moving more down, it's on all of our platforms, so that's fine. But the reality and the reliability of it are still, how do I make that function? Whereas we know that in a streaming context, Prime Video have all of the people behind this to make this work. So if you want to watch it on your phone, on a bus, as long as you've got mobile data coverage, it'll work. If you want to watch it on your laptop or your tablet or your big screen television or your projector, as long as you've got access to the internet for any of that, it'll just work.
I guess the big fear here is that fragmentation, and Ramble fans know what I'm talking about because they are forced to
Yes,
sign up for what is it, 5 or 6 different services if they want to watch
easily. Yes.
all the different flavors of the sport. Is this the beginning of the floodgates that now other sports are going to face the same problem?
No, because I think that football is a victim of its own success in that regard, in that it has so many different leagues that so many people want to follow. So
Yeah.
therefore, those deals are cut independently, league by league. And that means you've got to sign up to 5 or 6 things to get to watch them here in Australia. For things like cricket, because we are a largely parochial beast, and that's certainly what the anti-siphoning list points us at, we're only concerned about our national team. Now, I know there are lots of people in Australia who support other national teams, and this will be great for them as well because they'll be able to watch every game for the price of a, Prime Video subscription. We're not going to lose the domestic stuff because, like, as in the domestic international tests and T20s and stuff, because A, the anti-siphoning list says so, and B, it would be broadcast suicide, right? When we acknowledge straight away that it is live sport that is keeping free-to-air largely afloat, along
Yeah.
with live news and those sorts of things. And they know that as soon as we can get it somewhere else cheaper, they are cooked,
Because that's what we did with everything else we watch.
right? Everything else.
So looking at the big picture, like you said, they've been talking about changing the anti-siphoning list for years, and they finally got around to it and did stuff all.
Yep.
When's the next time they will revisit this? Can you foresee a time when those when the rules might not be there to stop an Amazon saying, right, we got the Boxing Day test?
Well, that first of all, that was the big jump up and down. Didn't we need to make changes to the anti-siphoning list so that they can't do this? Mate, there's the anti-siphoning list is meant to balance the interests of the public with the interests of the lobby groups who represent the people that fund them. So Free TV Australia and the, subscription television lobby groups. I think the difficulty is that there has to be a pragmatism laid across it. Like I said, all of these games are overseas at time slots that do not suit the majority of our population. So they are not worth the money that your ICC would have been looking for. So for Nine and Foxtel to go, it's just not a big deal to us, and we don't have to do it, Prime Video can fill their boots. The real challenge would be, and let's take AFL as an example. Seven and Foxtel have that sewn up for another 85 years, I think it is, whatever their current deal says runs for. Seven have at least caught up that they need to make sure that they have streaming rights for the games that they broadcast. That will start with the next season, or the season after next, I think it is. They can broadcast the grand final, but for 2025, they can broadcast the games that they air. They can stream the games that they broadcast.
Yeah.
They know they need to do that because that's where largely their audience is going. They still need to put it on free-to-air television. Could we see a deal where, hypothetically, Prime Video buy the streaming rights and Seven have this and Foxtel have that? No, because it's too precious to Foxtel as well. KO is a huge play for them, and they cannot afford to lose the streaming rights on any sports deal that they've got. So, to that end, it's going to be a pretty lockstep move, I think, moving forward for any of the broadcast rights deals that we see. That will be both linear free-to-air broadcast television and streaming, with that asterisk that might only be broadcast video on demand, as in watch it live streamed, may not include catch-up.
Yeah.
But that's sort of the finities of each deal. When is there any siphoning list due for review again? Look, I can't tell you explicitly, but I'm going to say it's somewhere probably between the next 5 to 10. That said, any government of the day can review it at any point that they like because it's legislation.
If they're brave enough to touch it.
Well, this becomes the thing, and it really is propping up the free-to-air industry now and supporting them in a way that I think personally is unfair. However, I'm a lone voice in that regard, other than, Patrick Delaney, the head of Foxtel Group. Look, I think that it would be a brave government that says your AFL Grand Final doesn't have to be on free-to-air television. I think that literally could be, certainly in a few states, an election loser.
All right. Well, it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out. Enjoy your summer of cricket.
Oh, mate, bring on the Sydney Test. I cannot wait.
So, Alex, Epic Games, the maker of Fortnite, perhaps had an epic legal win this week. What's the story?
So this comes out of the long-running case that they've had, and we have discussed this on the show before. Against,
Episode 292,
Google.
if you want to go back. It's way there. I looked it up.
Thank you, Mr. Research.
We're on 459, so that's how long ago it is.
We've been covering this story for a while, people.
Yes.
But for those who haven't heard that podcast, shame on you. But also, the story here is basically Epic makes nearly all the money out of Fortnite, but it would like to make a little bit more. And specifically, it decided it felt that the fees paid for apps through Google Play and through Apple's App Store were a little too high, typically sitting around 30% as per most developers. And it worked out a way to circumvent that and still get people playing Fortnite and giving them money for dances and emotes and the things that you can spend money on in Fortnite. And not surprisingly, Apple and Google didn't like this and summarily kicked them out of their app stores. And that's when the lawyers got involved. And several years and several hundred episodes of an award-winning podcast later, here we are. This week's news is that for the first time in a long time, because Epic's largely been losing these things, it scored a victory. A California court ruled that Google's Play Store operated as an illegal monopoly, quashing competition and charging unduly high fees. And as a result of that victory, in theory, because it's a legal victory, it will be appealed, Epic Games will be able to submit a court filing on what kind of remedy it wants, how it wants it to be fixed. Probably, just as a guess, I don't work for Epic Games, dropping those fees kind of alarmingly because, again, Epic Games would like all the money. Thank you very much.
So didn't they have the same legal fight with Apple and not win?
Yeah, and this is the kind of interesting implication of this one. As I said, look, Google's going to appeal this. This is not a case where Fortnite is suddenly going to reappear in the Play Store and they're only going to have to give Epic's only going to have to give Google like 5% of the take or whatever it is. They will appeal it. This will still roll through the courts for some time. But the contrast could not be starker between the fact that Apple has largely won its cases. Here, Google has lost. And it's kind of hard to see, I think, if Google is a monopoly on Android, a platform where actually you can sideload apps. There are alternate app stores. A lot of them are very risky, but they exist. How is Apple, where it's the Apple way, it's the App Store way or the highway, not a monopoly?
Well, when you dig into it, part of the ruling seems to be that Google had secret revenue sharing deals with some of the big developers, with some of the smartphone makers. They had copies of internal conversations where basically executives were admitting, yes, this is designed to, screw them over and make sure there are no rival app stores. So they kind of got red-handed being sneaky in the background in a way that Apple either didn't do or at least didn't get caught doing.
Yeah, potentially. And obviously, legally, we don't want to get into hot water here, but I believe Google was also kind of found to have deleted certain messages and emails, and the judge decided that they were going to draw the most negative inferences of those messages missing. Maybe Apple is better at covering its tracks, but that is a pure speculative opinion, not a legal one, just in case Tim Cook's lawyers are listening.
Yes, and that's the last episode ever of Vertical. Thank you very much for joining us.
I mean, one of the interesting things here as well is that I believe this case was actually decided by a jury. This wasn't just a judge going, the law says this. This was a jury looking at it and weighing up the arguments and counter arguments as well. So the people, theoretically, because that's what a jury is meant to be, the people have spoken.
So if you're a scammer, though, you must be rubbing your hands here, getting people outside of the Play Store and reintroducing them to side loading or dodgy third-party apps from Russia, third-party app stores in Russia. I mean, it's just a recipe for disaster, isn't it?
Well, this is the weird thing, though, because Android already does it. Android already allows you to do this. And in fact, if you want to run Fortnite on an Android device, you still can. You've just got to install Epic Games' own client on an Android device. You've got to allow for non-Play Store. Yeah. And you sideload it in and it will run. And, Epic Games has their own version of this. Quick tip here, make sure if you're doing that, you're actually getting Fortnite actually from Epic Games. As Adam was saying, there's lots of dodgy operators out there. And I think the other angle there is that, well, honestly, Google's not exactly been great at keeping malware and dodgy apps and bad apps out of the Play Store. In terms of app hygiene, while again, not spotless, Apple actually has a much better rep.
True, but also because they've got things locked down even tighter. The only way you can sideload things onto an iPhone is if you jailbreak. I haven't even said that phrase for a long time. Do people still jailbreak iPhones? I was doing it back in the day. I had an onion on my belt.
It was a back in the day phenomenon. There's probably a scene out there for it. I've not really thought about it for a long time, to be totally honest with you. I suppose the other way that you do it is, Apple actually has developer credential things, stuff like TestFlight and so on, where you can send, specifically developed apps or corporate apps and things like that. So there are sort of vaguely maybe ways, but you're right. I mean, it is a much, much more controlled environment. But certainly if I was Apple's lawyers, I'd be looking over every single sentence, every single phrase of the ruling against Google, even potentially preparing a brief to, and this is going to sound very weird, to support Google when they appeal it, to say, hey, we also do this and we think Google's right because we'd like to keep our hefty share of that market.
A very weird case of my enemy's enemy is my friend.
Yeah, totally. Of course, the other side of this is just the money side of it. It's that, it is that question of how much they charge and whether this is a fair amount to charge. Because, as I said before, Fortnite makes all the money. Epic would like to make even more of all that money. And it seems to be one of their biggest revenue sources by a very, very wide margin. The Epic Games Store doesn't really make the money itself. And where that gets interesting, I think, at a consumer end, because at a certain point, this is just a big corporations fighting each other kind of battle. But at a consumer point, it could get interesting if they are able to argue for a lower rate, and even maybe, and we've sort of seen this before, even maybe if they're able to just frighten Apple and Google into saying, well, okay, maybe 30% was too much. Hey, everyone, do 20%, do 15%, whatever, seasonal special. That could lead to theoretically cheaper apps. But then I wonder about the App Store economy. I mean, Adam, when was the last time you paid money for an app?
That is a very good question. I couldn't tell you. I was never a big consumer of apps to begin with. But no, all the apps I install are free apps which go with the services that I use.
Yeah, and I mean, you've got things on the Apple side of the fence, for example. I mean, games were a big revenue raiser. Obviously, Fortnite is a game.
Yeah.
But you've got things like Apple Arcade, which is just a straight up subscription service. Yes, you're spending money on games, but you're not buying individual apps. You're getting the as it were, Netflix of games. And of course, actually, speaking of Netflix, they have mobile games which you can get if you've got a Netflix sub. You're not spending extra money on those. I'd be really interested, actually, to hear any listener feedback on this, if they've got any thoughts on, on app pricing and what they're spending on apps these days versus a few years ago.
Am I right in thinking that Apple gave some ground on this? I'm just thinking back to, because when the App Store came out, you paid Apple 30. If I sold you an app for $10, Apple got 30% of that. But then they came along with some subscription services, and Apple's like, well, okay, if you can install Netflix for free, but if you want to subscribe through the app through the App Store, then we want a cut of that. And that was 30% as well, which people weren't very happy with. But then after a while, Apple said, all right, well, if you sign up for a subscription, we'll take 30% the first year, and then after that, we'll only take 15%. So they've kind of already felt the pressure there a bit, haven't they?
Well, yes and no. I mean, you can also look at examples like Amazon with its Kindle app. So the Kindle app exists for iOS, but you can't buy books through it. You can only load the stuff that you've already bought. And they actually say, look, if you want to buy books, you've got to do it through a web browser, you've got to do it through other methods, but we can deliver them to your device. Apple doesn't have a problem with that. That's very much a consequence of them not wanting to give Apple a cut of that ebook money, because they're already sharing it with actual book publishers as well, presumably.
Heaven forbid.
Yeah. So people have done various different kind of workarounds. And I think it comes down at a consumer level as well. Of course, it comes down to that question of friction. You can do Fortnite on an Android device, as I was saying. You can actually do Fortnite on an iOS device. You've just got to use a game streaming service, an Xbox gaming, or I think it's on GeForce Now as well. That will work because you're not actually paying money directly in there, and you're running a virtual version of that app. Now, depending on the quality of your broadband connection, of course, that may or may not work all that well for you. But there are ways and means around all of this stuff. And as we saw, in fact, with this court case and what they've said with this court case, there are also secret little backdoor deals that sometimes get done so that some people are paying more than others. And that's about it for Vertical Hold for the year. Thanks to Mog for speaking with Adam earlier. And we're heading off on an extended summer break, and we'll see how things look next year. But in the meanwhile, you can catch us at the Vertical Hold webpage on Facebook, Instagram. You can look up Adam or me on Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, or whatever that service that Elon Musk runs. I forget the name of it. He's probably changed it again by now.
And thanks, everyone, for dropping by. Drop us a line. Let us know what you think about Epic versus the world. Let us know what you think about Amazon snapping up the sports rights. Let us know what you think about the world in general.
That could lead to... Lost my train of thought. So bloody hot.